Okay, everybody, the time has come, 7:15. So good evening and welcome to everyone to this meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Mick Radley and I'm the chairman of this committee. Before I begin with the meeting, I just have a few items of general note. Members, the agenda for this meeting includes an item pertaining to the scrutiny around the Council's initial budget position. First of all, I would like to welcome members of the Cabinet to this meeting and thank them for their attendance. It's a full house, I think. It's good. Members of the Cabinet are in attendance in order to present the item and respond to any questions that the committee members may have. I would also like to welcome any other members who are joining us virtually tonight. Members, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our newly elected member, Councillor Martin Green. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. Please can I remind you that this meeting is being broadcast to the public via the Council's YouTube channel. Please can mobile phones be switched to silent? And as I move through the meeting, can I also remind everyone to turn off their microphones when they're finished speaking? We're not expecting a fire alarm test this evening. In the event that a fire alarm sounds, please vacate the chamber via the fire exit at the rear of the chamber and assemble in the car park. I shall now proceed with the business of the meeting. So, agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Raymond. I think apart from that, I think all the committee is present. I now move to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Do any members of the Performance Management Committee have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? Please state the item and the nature of your interest. Councillor Spring.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a member of Essex County Council and MPI, because there's various references to that throughout the whole paper. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other declarations? I see no others. Okay, thank you for that. So we'll now move on to agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I please have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record of the previous meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee held on the 21st of September 2022. Councillor Coleridge, thank you for moving those. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rose, thank you for seconding that. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous, that's all. Thank you.
Chairman, sorry to interrupt, but before we proceed to the next item of business, while he's signing the minutes, please may I test the connections of Councillor Paul Thorogood. He's joined the meeting. So
okay, yes, we'll pause for a moment for you to do that test.
Good afternoon, Councillor Thorogood. Can we just test your connection to the meeting, please?
Yeah, apologies for that. My computer just decided to do a Zoom update while I was logging in. So.
Okay, we can hear you nice and clearly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So, just concluding, the minutes are therefore approved, and I'm now initialing those and signing those minutes. And then we'll move on. Okay, there we go. So that's the minute. So the minutes are approved. Okay, we now move on to next item, which is agenda item 4, which is public question time. Members, I can confirm that there are no registered speakers for this evening's meeting. So we now move on to item 5, which is scrutiny of the budget options and proposals for 2023-24. Members, for this item, we are to receive a presentation from members of the Cabinet. The report on this item is set out in pages 5 to 38 of your agenda and has been prepared by Phil Myers, Head of Finance, who is also in attendance together with the Council's Management Board. All members will have the opportunity to ask questions to the Cabinet. There will be a session at the end of the presentation. I would therefore ask that members do not indicate they wish to ask a question until that session is opened up. So please can I now invite Councillor Butland, Leader of the Council, and Councillor McKee, Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Transformation, to make your presentation. Over to you, gents.
Thank you, Chairman. I will make a short introduction and I'll pass over to Councillor McKee as the Cabinet Member for Finance to go into the details. I think it would be fair to say that this is probably the most difficult budget setting year that we have had for many, many, many years. And indeed, we are no way finished our deliberations, but we felt we would like to come at this stage, as we normally do in November, although I suspect we will be back a few more times yet before we actually get to a fixed budget. In terms of the time, we are expecting the actual local government settlement, that's how much we will get as a council, probably not to be made known until the week before Christmas, although the department has indicated that it will be issuing a sort of guidance leaflet earlier in December, which will give us an idea as to the way things are going. But I just wanted on the financial challenge, if we can move forward to the first slide, just to draw the attention of members to some of the difficulties and challenges that we are facing. Clearly there's the shrinking economy and the possibility of a prolonged recession, which of course in terms of our medium-term financial strategy takes us through to 24-25. High inflation, members will need no reminding of the current rate of inflation and the impact that that will have on pay expectations. And of course we've already, Chairman, as Councillor McKee will make reference to, seen the impact in the current financial year of the pay settlement for 22-23. There are cost pressures arising from supply chain problems. The local government is not immune from the pressures that are hitting the rest of the economy. Clearly, interest rates impact enormously on us. The difference between borrowing at 1% and borrowing at 5% is enormous, and it has meant that we've had to look at a number of projects to see whether they are still able to go forward. There are some legislative uncertainties. For example, the Environment Act, we have been waiting a considerable period of time and still wait for some of the decisions from government around areas of the environment which will impact or may impact on the way in which we provide services. The impact on our residents of the cost of living may, of course, impact upon the council in terms of the rate of council tax collection. At the moment, the rate of council tax collection is holding up very well, but of course we still have the main winter to get through, and people have their first fuel bills to start coming through. And against that, our overall aim is to deliver high quality services and to meet as many of the demands that we can, although unlikely to be able to meet all demands. So it's against that background that the Cabinet has had several meetings so far in terms of discussing ways in which we might move forward. And so with your permission, Chairman, I'll ask Councillor McKee to take through the members through the slides, copies of which I think were circulated to them previously. So without more ado, I'll pass over to Councillor McKee.
Next slide, please. Right. This is the medium-term financial strategy cut as of now. As Councillor Button said, some of these could change depending upon the settlement, but the top line, the council tax rate was assumed at plus 2%, assumed in this MTFS look at the next 4 years. If you look at the top line, that's where we were in March of this year, or February of this year, with a 925 in 23-24 and 1.2 just over across the MTFS period. That's a negative gap effectively to be made. I won't go through the line details other than point out that the big cost pressure coming from this year through into the MTFS is the 2 million pay inflation award, which clearly is extraordinary from where we have been in the past. And I'll drop down to the bottom line, and I'll remind everybody, in case anyone's forgotten, they probably haven't, but this is the number on the savings required on the bottom line is cumulative. So this coming 23-24, there's a requirement of 1.4 million of savings required in some way or increased revenue. But if you don't make that, then next year it's 1.9, after that is 2.2 and 2.4. So there is no rest for the wicked, as it were. We have to look at these things, year by year, but actually if you duck the issue in 23-24 anyway, then you do carry that forward into next year, so you're making a rod for your own back going forward in future years. Next slide. Pay, inflation, cost pressures. I just talked about the 2.24 million in 23-24. So the pay bill now is £790,000, including 3% for 23-24. There's some issues of revenue and service charges around Causeway House, but you're probably aware that it's not fully let at the moment. The top floors in here were being let. They're now not. We're trying very hard to get them let. So there's a loss of income, but also because there's not a tenant in there, our service charge costs go up because it's not shared with a tenant. You're all aware of the gas and electricity market. I'm sure privately you're looking at your smart meters at home in horrified. It has the same effect on the authority. Car park income is down by 210k. Waste management and other operational costs 185k. Housing benefit, this is where we have to add to the housing benefit because from last year to this year, we're looking at there will be a reduction in what the government we think are going to fund. So we have a 100k increase in cost to make the same amount that we would have had last year. Audit fees, interestingly, are going up. We're changing our auditor, and the change of auditor, as well as the amount of auditing they have to do, has caused the fees to go up significantly, and that plus our insurance costs is 148k. The tax sharing agreement, as you're aware, when we have a council tax agreement, we have a reduced incentives share of 50k because of the way we share that with other preceptors. Other inflation costs, which if you look is a net, because we do get income from extra recyclates, but the net difference is 10k cost. These assumptions are being kept under review, and we'll look at them as we go forward into the next months until we come to the final decision to go to Cabinet and then on to Council. Next slide, please. What we've got is a structural gap, which is not one that can be easily closed by the way in the past we have closed these gaps, by officers doing efficiency gains and members coming forward with the ways in which we can make either greater income or save costs. It's actually more fundamental than that now, particularly to do with the salary costs. And so we are assessing our priorities, but we still want to be a low tax, increasing income. Investment ambitions have not gone away. We want to protect services, and we are clearly focused on increasing or maintaining and increasing our customer satisfaction. There's a bunch of activities in hand, but then, and I will come on to what those activities are, but it's not sufficient to close the gap, and therefore we may have to look at using balances in order to close that gap. But that's the last thing we would do, not the first thing we would do to close the gap. Management savings, which those are things that officers without any member input have looked at the way in which they run the authority, and they've contributed £393,000 of savings towards the gap that we discussed earlier. Next slide. So I said I'd talk about the actions underway, some of which you're probably aware of. You're all aware of the IDP programme, which has now been in place for 5 years, I guess. And that's looking at the way we invest our capital and the way we create income from those capital investments and developing things like Horizon 120 as an example of something that is tracked by the EDP programme. That's been refreshed now, given the gap that we have to try and close, and we better understand the challenges and the oversight that were required. So that's sort of refreshed, and we're splitting the IDP programme into a IDP team and a capital team to make a better use of our resources. There is a review underway of commercial activities, and I think Richard Van Delken may well, if questioned, want to make some comments about what they may look like, but that's definitely, we're benchmarking to our peers, and we've got an external consultant who's advising us the things we could look at to make better use of our resources and make more commercial activities with increased income. There are various service reviews, and one of the ones that first to be looked at is our operations, and we're using a thing called we're introducing zero-based budgeting, which looks at all of the costs, item by item, and the benefits that those costs provide for us, so that the Cabinet and the Council can make decisions on those things we should be doing more of, those things we should be doing less of, given that some are statutory and some are not, but we'll only know that when we've got an in-detail cost and benefit analysis of line by line in a service, and we're starting, as I said, with operations, which is one of our biggest costs. Shared services, you're probably aware that we have probably been the leaders. Braintree, have been the leaders in shared services across Essex authorities, payroll being one, the procurement hub being another, and now, of course, we're looking at procurement, particularly across the Essex family, to explore opportunities, economies of scale, and therefore reduce cost and increase resilience. And there's a combined work going on with Essex and some authorities with Braintree to make that into a reality, and it's quite an advanced stage. And of course, devolution, I won't say too much, but there is an opportunity in devolution to reduce costs and have increased services through that devolution process. Next slide. So here's the options and choices we've looked at. Funding other organisations. And it'll become obvious, and I said this in a conversation with others about what we've been up to, we've gone down to, we as a Cabinet and as a workshops, gone down to things as extreme as, should we spend £3,000 on a thing that's not valued? It's gone right down to £3,000 and £4,000, looking at those, every bit of spend and everything that we think is not discretionary, but we could in fact do without, then we've put it on as an option to stop doing it. So one of those things is revised funding for citizens' advice. It's believed we could in fact provide better service to our residents by doing things in a different way, and that does save us £25,000, I think. No, more than that, sorry, 107,000, with 25,000 going to a different service. Revised management agreement with the Museum Trust. Those of you probably aware, the Museum Trust is on it's now a 25-year or 24-year agreement, and each year we have driven that cost down so that it becomes more and more efficient. There was an agreement made with the museum that they have a reduction of 3% per annum for the next 3 years. That's, if you do it, about 10% overall cost over those 3 years, and to make them whole in this difficult year, we're agreeing to in fact give them a grant to minimise that reduction in the first year. Street scene funding agreement with Parish Council to reduce from 88k to 59k, saving 30k, wherever it is. Looked at options on horticultural services. We're replacing all summer winter bedding planting with sustainable planting across the district. There is a cost saving if we don't have to go and make 2 or 3 plantings per year in, for instance, within the town centre of Braintree, and we put therefore longer, more sustainable planting. That saves significant money. We're reducing the cuts to urban amenity verges from 12 to 14 months to 6 to 7. Note, Essex County provide funding for 2 safety cuts and we do the rest. And we're ceasing the provision of hanging baskets in Braintree Town Centre and Causeway House. These are proposals. Options, how we communicate with the district. We cease provision of the hard copy waste calendars and make available online. There's been a lot of debate about this as to whether or not people value those hard copy, fold out paper copies in their homes. It has been online for some time. We are clearly, as a digital council, and trying to encourage people to do more and more using their mobile phones and their laptops and whatever else devices. It does save significant amount of money if we don't have to print all of the. And if we change a service, change a schedule, it's much more difficult if we have to then communicate when they've got hard copies. So there's some significant benefits to not doing that. We've decided as an option to stop doing that. But however, those people that haven't got a laptop or a mobile phone can request one and they provide a paper copy so no one will not to know when their bins are collected. The council page and local press monthly will be fortnightly. Increase advertising space in the contact magazine, increase income, and we're going to consider further opportunities to go more and more paperless organisation the way it operates. I mean, I personally would like us to go into all non-paper because it does not just money, it is also good for the environment and the planet if we're not killing trees by producing reams and reams of paper. And most of the private sector operates very well without lots of paper. Next slide. Related to community facilities, we're going to continue the future arrangements for provision of management of Whitton Public Toilets at Malden Road and Newland Street and Halstead Public Gardens. And there are conversations with other agencies how that might be run in the future, and those are ongoing. In fact, it's Whitton and Halstead Town Council. So those conversations are not complete, but that's something that we are considering. Parking. Now, we are planned to move to a cashless on all car parks for 2 reasons. One is it's the right way to go. The second reason is that where there are car parks with cash machines, they are targets for thieves and criminals to remove the boxes with the cash in, and it costs us way more money to replace the box than the money that they've stolen in the first place. And in fact, it's much more flexible when we want to change parking rates or reduce them and so on. We're removing the 10p after 3 p.m. provision and standard daytime to apply. Overnight fees set at £1, set 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And we're looking at the tariffs. And if you look at the tariffs there, from the current charge to the new charge, it's 50p to or 80p or £1, depending upon whether it's 1 hour or 6 hours. Quite minimal increases compared to some of our local authorities. Other potential savings. It is set out in the Cabinet report, but I happen to have made a note as to what these things are, so I don't have to refer to it. We're going to remove the commercial. There was in the establishment there was a commercial manager post which was not filled, and in fact, what we are planning to do is to take some of the role that post would have filled and spread it across other officers to save that post and in fact disestablish it effectively, making the saving. We haven't suffered from not having that role, so there's no reason why we should hire it. Introducing new charges, for instance, sealing contracts, which is illegal, have introduced an opportunity to be able to seal some contracts and raise some income. Cover the admin costs. We're making referrals to government schemes, etc. So these are quite small amounts, but we've looked at every single way we can be more commercial. I talked about parking earlier. There is a parking options paper, but we're looking at how we charge for parking at Causeway House, including who should pay that charge, rather than it being free for everybody. Changing arrangements for certain activities, how we assess customer service excellence. So this is one of the things of £3,000, I think it was £5,000, that we spent on an external agency. We didn't think that was good value for money. In fact, we could have a different process internally to do the same thing. and so we're saving that. And the other, I think, is the what do they call it? The service that we stick on. What do you call it, Wendy? Oh, Keep Britain Tidy. So we paid a fee to Keep Britain Tidy. We decided that's not really good value for money, so we're discontinuing that to save money. Member development, it was a budget for training. We're just taking the budget away, but members will then get specific requests to do training, and that will be provided in a different way. Next slide. Sorry, I'm just... Oh, there you go. Oh dear, right, hang on. I got myself in a... Right, I'll read it from there. Full council, right. Weed control. Now, this is probably controversial, but we've looked quite carefully at the use of glyphosate, and it still is not banned from use by the government. We looked at the options, 3 options in fact. One, to use weed scrubbers, none of which are as effective as glyphosate. And actually, as we're looking at the maximum amount of savings we can make, the option we looked at actually maintains the status quo, so do exactly as we do now, and it actually gives us either 56k or 86k, 85k saving, depending on which other option we looked at. So we've opted for the option to make no change and carry on as now. Next slide. We've looked at, I think this has been looked at multiple times, probably at least 3 to my knowledge. Other authorities charge for green waste. This is such a large cost and therefore a revenue opportunity if we were to charge for it. We've looked at, and you can see the numbers there, in a full year it's over £500,000. We've looked at the financial modelling. We're looking at the government's Environment Act, and regardless of what happens in the Environment Act, we think it's the right thing to do to look at charging for green waste and introduce that charge, and I think it's up there at estimate of £45 per green bin, and do it April 2024 to get the timing right and the cost right and the operations delivery right, so that it goes smoothly when we introduce it.
Oh, you collect for a year.
Pardon?
We could collect all year.
Oh yes, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned, and we collect for 12 months, not for the 9 months, which I think a number of people would be very pleased with. So we'd collect during the autumn leaf dropping season right through the year. Next slide. Fees and charges options. We looked at commercial and bulky waste, building control, land charges, cemeteries, and all of those charges where we could look at increasing them by inflation. We've in fees and charges review currently being undertaken. That's not reported yet. Other factors we're looking at is market competitors, contract provisions, concessionary rates, etc. But parking comes under a separate parking protocol, which is still to be approved, but we are looking at the way those costs might be managed. Next slide. The strategy on earmark reserves. So some of the reserves we've got are no longer being held for the purpose which they were first set up for. So what we've decided to do is to aggregate those into a different reserve pool. We're looking at the levels of balance required, and we're going to reallocate some of those reserves to meet priorities to replenish the global fund balances. We're strengthening the framework and control of how the reserves are managed. Quite a lot of them were some years old and still in reserves and not needed for that purpose. And the outcomes will be reflected in the budget report when it's created and comes through Cabinet. The general fund balance is stated there, 6.1. The latest forecast for this year, for 22-23, is an addition of 536 of those balances. The minimum level of 1.5 has been established for several years, but actually CIPFA recommend, and actually when we look at our budget for this year, there is, and the MTFS period, the risks within it are much greater than they have been in the past, to do with the things that Councillor Butler talked about: inflation, recession, the cost of living crisis, all of those things, whether our the rates of collection maintain, they are maintained at the moment, but whether they're maintained, so we do think it's sensible to increase that to £3 million, that's doubling the 1.5 to 3, but it still leaves capacity to utilise balance in short term only, in the balance the 23-24 budget. Next slide. The council tax options, you might notice there is a new option that we've not considered in the past, and that's the 3%. That's because that's the latest guidance from the government, is that we as a district authority could choose a 3%, but I will, even if we selected 3%, it only makes 105k only. It makes 105k, which won't solve the problem, although over the MTFS, which is interesting, it has a significantly greater effect. It's £414,000 over the MTFS. So clearly, we're not looking at the freezing level, so we are looking down to the bottom of that as to what the council tax should be set. Next slide. Cost of living support. We're still continuing the council tax support scheme. We're still maintaining the hardship fund. We are providing, through Citizen Advice, money advice service. We are existing welfare officers support residents to claim benefits and assist where experiencing difficulty, and we are putting extra support to the discretionary housing fund. So we are taking cost of living, even though it's a tough year, we're taking it seriously by maintaining our level of support for our residents. Next slide. Capital. You notice on here we've got a balance of resources of £3,800,000 is the balance between the resources allocated, which includes 3.5 million of borrowing, and against existing programmes, provisions for Whittam at 3.5 million, Halstead still in at 0.6 million, Millennium Slips, which is a project which has not stopped at the moment, and is still if you remember, that was us, Essex County Council, and the government, but funding those slips on the A120 at Galleys Corner. So we're still maintaining that 2.5. That will come under review, I guess, and depending what Essex County Council decide in their capital allocations, that could be reviewed. It's worth saying the Manor Street 5% at 1.5 million could well be overstated, but until such time as we get the final account from that cost from insurance and the like to do with pandemic and the cost of that the contractor made, we still keep that in, and of course infrastructure fund financing for H120. So that does give you, if you look at the borrowing at 3.5, it's 2.9 for the Plaza on Horizon 120, 0.6 million for Manor Street, which is the residual effect of the 9.9 which we've already allocated to that project. Next slide. So the balance of existing capital reserves are, there's 2 capital bids in, which I'm sure will get discussed. From council capital bids at £71,000. The service bids from within the cabinet report from members effectively is £800,000. And I think in your papers you've seen how that's broken down. Next slide. And here's how the 808,000, in fact, is broken down. Community facilities, 90k for Spire Road, refurbished Newland Street toilets, House of Public Gardens, and Public Garden, Wildlife Garden. Sports facilities, 183, car parking machine replacement. Remember my earlier comment about car parking machines. Operational vehicles are 150, IT, and that's really to make sure we continue with our digital strategy, which is a commitment the way we've made, 182, including some IT replacement and planned maintenance of Causeway House, 53k. Next slide. These are the two capital bids from councillors. One is the sustainable parking at Silver End Bolt Club, which was made by Councillor Abbott. We're considering further in relation to developing a designated public car park area. The report on that is not yet with us, and the feasibility report is being run by officers. When we have that, we'll make another determination about that capital bid. The second one is Fearing Community Centre, which is a good use of, good request, but unfortunately there are other ways in which that funding could be sourced by other grants that are available to do just that, and we would help with Parish Council and Community Hub to identify those external funding sources. The autumn statement. I don't know how much detail you need, but I'll pick out the important ones. The investment zones which you're probably aware of, and we had made a bid for, has been dropped by this current statement. There is the council tax flexibility, which counties got a flexibility of 3%, 5%, which is 3 plus 2. We've only got flexibility to go to the 3%, not the 5. Business rates is interesting. There is a revaluation underway, but we will be made whole for those inflationary costs. How much that is, we don't know. So we're waiting to see what that making whole looks like before we know whether we have got. It could be good, it could be neutral. I'm sure Phil's got comments to make on that. There's some grant funding clawback. Devolution is a commitment to continue devolution, so that gives us an opportunity during the MTFS period to make significant cost and income changes through the devolution process, and it will be about local growth matched against local challenges. The levelling up fund now I think is likely to be significant. How that 1.7 billion is allocated is anyone's guess at the moment, but it is in fact there with that's a continuation of the last government's idea to have levelling up and include Essex. Next. The energy relief scheme, which I think is good for businesses but not good for a local authority, we will almost certainly not be included in any extension of that. That's the plan of any non-domestic consumers who are made whole by the energy relief scheme. Household support fund, £1 billion will be provided to enable extensions to the housing. I forgot the name of it now. Over 23-24, the money is administered by local authorities, so that's good news for our residents. The national living wage sounds like a good idea, but of course we have people who that will affect, so our payroll costs will go up through the national living wage, affecting our lower paid workers. NIC contributions will be fixed, not raised with inflation, which I'm not sure is good or bad. Migration of housing benefit claimants to pension credit has been deferred yet again. And efficiency savings review will target increased efficiency, reprioritise spending away from lower value programmes, and review the effectiveness of the public bodies. Next steps. Right, so we will continue through now until, I guess, Christmas, but 21st of December we have a workshop planned. I think that's now 22nd actually. It's now the 22nd. Actually, the slide has not been updated because we only decided last night. Because we expect to get whatever the settlement is on the 21st of December in the morning. So to give officers time to work that through as to what it might look like before the Cabinet looks at it. We're having the meeting on the 22nd. This looks like going into Christmas week, I suspect. Then January, there's consultation, Performance Management Scrutiny Committee back here on the 1st of Feb, 6th of Feb Cabinet. we therefore look like when 20th of February we'll have full council approving the budget and council tax. I think I'll stop there.
Wow. Okay, well, thank you both for the presentation. A lot of detail in there. Certainly, I guess we all expected it was going to be difficult, a difficult time, and many challenges, if you like, ahead of us to try and work through, to try and close the gap. Certainly, the point about needing structural change as well as, if you like, fine-tuning that we perhaps normally would do, certainly something I would recognise and agree with. So that is interesting to see that. Okay, so I would like firstly to give members of the Performance Management Committee the opportunity to put their questions first to Cabinet, and after that I'll then open up to members, other members present, including those joining us virtually. Before we start, I'll just kick this off with the first question, and then I'll hand it over to the rest of the committee members before asking some other questions at the end if they haven't already been covered. My first question to kick off is regarding the proposal or decision not to fill the role of commercial manager. As you may know, we had this committee had a scrutiny earlier in the year and presented some recommendations. I understand part of that the Cabinet didn't support our recommendation regarding retaining a commercial manager. I understand that. I guess I'm just really questioning the wisdom of that decision and whether we think that's the right approach, particularly given the scale of change required and the structural change, because this is not going to be a short-term issue, and perhaps more significant and important to have somebody really focused on driving through commercialisation and bringing through those benefits, particularly given structural change. I also note that there is a plan to recruit or to engage external consultants as well. Maybe that's already in progress. So there's obviously money being put to this task. I guess it's a question of where you put it. The other part of our scrutiny early on, I was pointed in the direction of some training around commercialisation. I think it was Councillor Van Dolkin pointed me in that direction. And one of the key messages coming out of that training was that councils that drove commercialisation in their organisation had a dedicated commercial manager. So I'm just really questioning the wisdom of that approach of not having that post. Thank you.
I'll ask Councillor Van Dolken to respond.
Thank you, Councillor. Several things I'd like to say. First of all, I think that we need to distinguish between councils at our level, district and borough councils, and county councils. So certainly Kent, for instance, as I'm aware, has a very large commercial organisation. We are not at that stage. Secondly, we've seen through the presentation by my colleagues the financial pressures we're under. So we would be talking about somebody relatively senior as a commercial manager. And thirdly, after consideration and advice from officers as well, it was felt that because the number of commercial activities that we might, whatever we call commercial, whatever we get involved with, is spread over so many different departments that it would be impossible for somebody to get their arms around the whole thing. So it would be best to leave it to the various service heads with periodic meetings through the IDP, the investment arm. So that was those are basically the three reasons I would suggest that this decision was taken.
Okay, thank you for that response. I guess part of what might be missing from this is the opportunities for commercialisation outside of the council for shared services and things like that. That's where that may come in to give some additional benefit.
Follow up. The James Sinclair is very much involved in this and has been a leader in this. So in a sense, we have that already in house.
Okay, thanks for that. I now open to members of the committee. So Councillor Rose first, and then.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, thank you for the detailed report, John. The only thing that I have a slight concern about is the 10p after 3 initiative. We brought that in some years ago, which was accepted by the residents as a step forward. The member for economic development is not here tonight, but maybe Richard could answer it. Councillor Van Dole can answer it. Is some of the retailers tell me that there is a perceived increase in footfall after 3 o'clock. A lot of it is from mothers with children who come in after school, put 10p in the machine, do what they need to do and go home. They go to the butchers, they go to the chemists, they may even go to the dentist. If we withdraw that 10p after 3, I believe that will disadvantage a number of people. And I just wonder, have we done any analysis with the high street? Because it will affect Braintree as well, and Halsford. Have we done any analysis as to, is there an increased footfall after 3? Or are we now going to say that we're going to do away and have just normal standard charging, and mothers with children may well go elsewhere? I really don't know. So are we making a saving one way but losing it by the retailers in another? I'd be interested with your answer. Thank you.
Okay, yes, and who'd like to take that one?
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Yes, certainly there was consideration given to the to what you've mentioned, the fact that it might influence footfall. However, we don't know whether people who do come at 4 or 5 come because it's 10p or whether they would be coming anyway. So I think it's very difficult to give a firm answer on that. On a more technical side, as you saw, we are proposing to move towards cashless machines. That has a cost. As with our credit cards, every time somebody has to pay the operator, and it would actually cost probably more than 10p to operate that. So it is with some regret. It was decided that for various reasons this would be ended, or the suggestion is that it be ended.
Okay, thank you for that.
I'll just come back to you. There is a village, and I guess there's probably others in the district, where they have 2 hours free parking. Because I used it the other day to go to the dentist, and it's 2 hours free parking. And I thought that's brilliant, because to pay another £3 or £4 as you go to the dentist, which is not a pleasurable journey anyway. And I just thought that's a brilliant initiative. But as you say about the retailers, I would suggest that somebody needs to speak to the retailers and ask them, do they see a perceived increase after 3? And I got my answers. You may want to get yours.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on. Councillor Coleridge, I think you're next, and there's a few others in the queue.
Sorry, I've got 3 questions. The first one is whether any consideration has been made about members' allowance and whether reducing any increase or freezing it could save some money for the council in the next few years. Second question is about green bin collections. rather than charging residents, whether any consideration about changing the schedule of green bins as a suggestion, if we went to a 4 weekly rather than fortnightly, whether that would create significant savings. And my third question was about, one was actually about parking, and slightly different slant from Councillor Rose, but in Witham particularly there are options for free parking as well, so is what the impact of charging more would have on the availability of free parking spaces within, I'm talking specifically about Witham, but I don't know what the impact would be on the other town centres in the district.
Mr. Chairman, okay, yeah, I'll take the first question on members' allowances. Green bins, I'll leave to Councillor Van Dolken, and parking as well. Members' allowances, if I can first of all deal with 22-23, the current year, members will be aware that the normal procedure in this council has been to carry out a review of members' allowances at the end of the 4-year period. Following the report from the independent review panel, if that was then accepted by council, was then to apply increases in the remaining 3 years in line with the local government settlement. So when the local government settlement was 2%, members' allowances went up 2%. If there was no increase, then there was no increase for members. This year, Chairman, has been slightly different because of the way in which the local government settlement has been restructured. It's not been a straight percentage across and varies from just over 10% for staff at the lower end of the salary scale to, I think, probably 0.5% at the very top. Most councils of our size are coming up, that produces an average increase of somewhere between 5.5% and 6%, which would mean if we were to apply that, it would increase the allowances in the current financial year by some £28,000, which of course would set the base for future years. I am bringing a paper to the December meeting of council setting this out, but with a recommendation that there should be no increase in members' allowances for 2022-23, this current year. And our reason for that is, in view of the fact that we're having to make a lot of other changes, a feeling that the public would find it, they would probably find it difficult to understand if we increase by £1, but to increase by £28,000 overall would be difficult. So, but it will be a council decision, there will be options there, but the recommendation coming from the administration would be that there be no increase in 22-23, and that the review of allowances, which would normally take place in February, March, should take place under the new administration coming into being post-May and a new independent body set up. So that's what we're intending to put to council on the 12th of December on that particular issue. Green bins, I'll pass.
Thank you, if I may, Chairman. Thank you for your suggestion, Councillor Coleridge, about a 4-weekly collection for green bins. That's certainly something we can look at, but bear in mind what we've said, that it is a non-statutory service. We are in the minority of authorities that have been providing this service for free, and we need to find some savings, I'm afraid. But certainly it's an idea, and I'm sure we can look at that. As regards parking, I think, Witham, you said free parking. I wasn't quite sure what you meant by that.
Yes, sorry. In Witham, there's an availability of free parking on the high street for an hour, which obviously there's more convenient parking sort of near the shopping centres, but there's a charge. So if the charges are increased on the ones you have to pay for from what could be considered a sort of nominal fee to slightly more, then the availability of the free parking, which potentially could be used by less wealthy residents, that could become sort of more scarce. So I'm just talking about potentially the impact of increasing charges.
Well, it's difficult to comment on that. That's it's called displacement, isn't it? So I really can't add much to that, I'm afraid. These are again all very difficult decisions, and I suppose if one is fortunate enough to have a car, it costs enough to run it anyway. We feel that the odd extra 50p or so is justified as part of helping this council to balance its books.
Okay, is that okay with the answer?
Yes,
answer all
fine,
your
yeah.
questions.
Yeah,
We're not happy with the answer, but you've got the answers.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Councillor Dervish, did you have your hand up? You did, in which case I think you were the next I saw, then Councillor Everard, then Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor McKee, for such a detailed report and all Cabinet members. Mine is also on green waste and the proposal of £45 charge per bin, which I think is exceptional value. However, I think £45 for 2 bins, so £90, would not be exceptional value. So I wonder if that can be re-looked at and discussed, because you wouldn't have the additional charge for the collection team to come out and everything else. So I'd like to see that maybe halved or at a discount rate for a second bin, please. The concern with the charge of the bins would be for additional waste being dumped in farmers' fields, particularly in rural areas, which is currently a problem, I know, in many villages. And also an increase in bonfires, which would be harmful, obviously, to our environment. But yeah, just a discount maybe on the second bin to reevaluate. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Van Delkin, you're popular tonight.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for your question. The word compost comes to mind, of course, rather than burning it, one hopes. And I don't know, my grass is pretty wet, so I don't think it would burn very well. Bear in mind that one important issue is that a lot of people living in this district do not have gardens, and in a sense, up to now, they've been subsidising those of us fortunate enough to have one. So that is one. Maybe I should have mentioned it before, but it is one aspect of this whole question. If I understand, I believe if you want an extra bin at the moment, it does cost £45. I should know. I'm sorry. It's something like that. So therefore, it would be the same. You'll be paying an extra £45 for 2 bins. To answer your question about if we do introduce the £45 charge, if you want a second bin, it's still going to cost you an extra £45.
Could I just say we still have to decide about the cost of a second bin, and we will take account of the comments that have been made by Councillor Dervish. It is interesting, for example, in Harlow, it's £96 for a bin, so it's just to put it in some context. But we do hear what you say about a second bin. We would want to encourage people to use the green bins because it's the right thing to do. So we will take on board the comments that have been made.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Everard, I think you're the next in line, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I was wondering what the thinking is with respect to renting out of this Causeway House, and also the effect of people working at home, whether there's any, whether the Cabinet welcome that. I don't. And what bearing would that have on renting out? I hope that's not the consideration, but I know Essex County Council were thinking of selling off they're building short-term gain and future worry, I would think. But just changing the subject, I notice that you are keeping the Halstead toilets open and the Whittam ones. I didn't see any mention of the bus terminus in Braintree. I think I'll rest there for the moment. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. If I just pick up about this building. We are currently conducting a review involving being carried out by some external consultants working with staff as well about future working arrangements. I do think the days of a person having a desk all the time in an office are gone, and probably gone forever. People have adjusted to different ways of working. It suits some staff to come into the office, it suits other staff to come into the office on occasions, and I think there's great benefit in coming in terms of that's how you get together and meet, and I think certainly some of the staff starting work during the pandemic, etc., probably missed out on that collegiate approach that you could get. But undoubtedly there is a demand also for more flexible working, and I'm sure Councillor Everard, as a champion of the workers, would actually, go very much for that. That does mean that we have to look at the resources that are available and whether we need them. I think all local authorities will need to do that. And also, of course, if we start to make better use of shared resources, which Councillor McKee talked about earlier, it may be that the person who's doing the job in Braintree is actually based in Colchester or Clacton, or vice versa. So I think as we get leaner and more efficient, then the requirement for office space does reduce. The question then is, what does one do with the office space? Because clearly the market for office space is on a downward trend. And you're quite right, the County Council is looking at this, and I know every other authority is looking at it. And we may well have to decide, is this a place that we stay in the longer term? So we will be constantly reviewing that. At the moment we have a building with a floor, as Councillor McKee said, which is empty. We hope to attract a tenant in, which will clearly help with it, but until things are signed, sealed and delivered, one can't rely on that. But I do think we are fundamentally working in a different way now. I don't think we will go back to the way in which we worked pre-pandemic. Your second question, through you, Chairman, was?
It was that I noticed that there was
toilets.
Cost. Yeah.
Yes. We are clearly looking to discuss with both town councils, and particularly you saw the ones there in Whittam, as to whether it is more efficient and effective for that to be managed locally by the town councils, etc. Clearly, it will be up to them as to whether they would want to take over the arrangements. If they don't, we will need to look at them. It is a very expensive cost, and particularly when refurbishment is needed. And I'll give one example. The Newland toilets at the toilets in Newland Street in Whittam to refurbish will cost £50,000. Now that's quite a significant amount of money which would need to be spent. And clearly we cannot operate toilets unless they are of a standard which is acceptable, etc. So there are some hard decisions that will need to be taken, but we are talking with both town councils on that. As far as the situation in Braintree town centre, I'm just trying to recollect. Unfortunately, Tom isn't here now at the moment, but I'm seeing a twitch at the end of the table. Councillor Mrs. Schmidt may well be able to help me.
Purely and simply, they're brand new.
Yeah.
They don't need anything doing to them or even mentioning.
I thought that was it, but I didn't want to say it and make myself look silly. Yes, cheers. Hope that answers your question through you, Chairman.
I think so.
And just a point of clarification, Councillor Everard mentioned Helston toilets, but Helston toilets are already run by the Town Council, so that doesn't apply in this case, just for clarification.
So it's a discussion about the gardens.
Gardens.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Okay, where are we? I believe it's Councillor Beavis next.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, like colleagues around the table, you know, I appreciate this is a really tough time in terms of the budget of the council, and we're clearly, you know, digging deep here. But I've just got a few observations, actually. So the issue around the hanging baskets here at Braintree District Council and in the town centre, I just think it's quite sad, actually, that we're going to look to take that away. I mean, first of all, you know, I come from an era where, when we started here as councillors, we had area offices. In fact, I started years ago working in one of them, and that's all gone now. So this is the only building that we have. It is the civic building for this district. And, you know, I think there's a bit of pride issue for me here. And I don't know about other members, but I always look at those hanging baskets. I always look at those baskets and think, that's a really good job again this year. And in terms of the town, you know, we've spent so much money in capital and revenue actually, to make the town of Braintree so great. And I use the town a lot, have done all of my life. And we have some amazing retailers in this town. We've got young apprentices that work so hard in this town. And again, I just think it's just setting the wrong image for us as a district. And, you know, we get the email from Wendy telling us, you know, all the great work that we've done around the district in terms of our planting and everything else. And yet here we have, again, the main town of the district, and there's not a hanging basket in it. And I just think that just doesn't sit right with me. So that's the first point. In the report, it says £30,000 to be deducted from parish councils. I take it that's town and parish. It doesn't say town and parish, but I take it is. And I can only assume that's street scene, because I can't think we give town and parish councils any other funding now. So, you know, obviously they're going to have to replace that service that's a cost to our town and parish councils. A bit irritated about that. On the waste calendar, I don't quite understand that. I understand the fact that you feel we don't need it. Actually, I use it all the time. Actually, every week I'm saying to my husband, which is it this week? Or he's saying the same to me. We can't be the only ones doing that. And yet we put out the Contact magazine and we have the budget book. Both of them are really well read. Why can't we just put the calendar in there? You know, to take the calendar away altogether. You know, I'm thinking about my mother and my elderly relatives, and they're well into their 80s and 90s, who rely on this. And I just think, again, it's a bit short-sighted. And finally, on the green waste, I'm not sort of surprised it's come forward, but I'm not particularly encouraged by it. In the current climate, I think if we're going to look at this, and I actually think £45 is £45 too much, I think we could have waited on that one, bearing in mind, you know, we're going to get through one of the hardest winters we've seen in a long time, and we've got to come out of that. So, and also the other thing I'm a bit unsure about is, if we have thousands of people deciding they're not going to pay this extra £45 a year, then what are we going to do with all these green bins? Because I would imagine they're going to take them to the recycling centre, and I would assume if that's the case, they're going to be easily, you know, able to be taken away from residents. So it's kind of the aftermath of that as well, I think. Thank you, Chairman. They're my observations.
Okay, bunch of questions there.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Spears. If we accepted all your suggestions, you've added 600-odd thousand back into the revenue. Where's that money coming from? To deal with the specifics, yes, it is nice to see hanging baskets, but it's not essential. And as far as the town centre is concerned, if the retailers felt it was a real advantage, there is nothing to stop the retailers actually coming together, forming a business development, a bid group to do that. and we would certainly be prepared to help them. In terms of the calendars, that's 25,000. It's something which it is interesting actually when you watch how people put bins out, and particularly those of us who live in urban areas, so we see whole streets and not. Yeah. Very often people just look out to see who's put a bin out, and when the days get changed, if they put it out on the wrong day, nearly everybody else sort of follows, etc. So I think there is an issue about it. It is a nice thing to do. We will make it available in paper for those who don't, but more and more people actually do access that online. And it also, I think, brings the point about this building, where you said, you know, it is a civic, but actually fewer and fewer people come here to do business. And that's another thing that, you know, we have to take account of. And as regards the green bins, yeah, it is potentially a significant saving. It would not come in the current 22-23. Looking at 24, though, if we could bring it in earlier, we would do so. But one of the things we do need clarification from the government, because at one stage they were saying green bins must be provided free of charge, and clearly we wouldn't want to impose a charge 1 week and then the following week not. So we will look at that. But having reservations is fine, but you've got to add up and put a monetary amount to those reservations. And at the moment, through you, Chairman, Councillor Beavis has added 600, or would add 600,000 to the gap. And that is something where I think it's perfectly entitled to do that. But I think if members are going to do that, they've got to come forward with where they're going to find the 600,000 or whatever figure it is. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that response. I think Councillor Sphere next.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, firstly, thank you for the presentations, especially Councillor McKee. I think it's very logically placed in front of us tonight, so I welcome that. Overall, I think there's been some interesting comments, but I think what's really important here is as we are talking about the budget for local authority, and what's important is our residents and those frontline services, how we deliver them. So we have a gap, and I think the Cabinet in conjunction with our excellent officers, are addressing that gap. And I think they are being innovative and looking at all potential income streams. And I also think they are looking at where savings can be made as well. Because what's really important here is that we've got to close this gap, because as you rightly said, Councillor McKee, especially with the income savings required, if we don't get that right, this year we are going to see, next year, an enormous increase in a budget deficit. And that is not good for this local authority. So I actually welcome, and as you said, Councillor McKee, that you actually are going through this line by line and drilling down to amounts of £3,000, and that's to be welcomed. So I think overall, although this is difficult, and we all know about the cost and inflationary pressures that we are, the rise in interest rates, the global influence, we all know that, and we accept that. We don't like it, but we know what it means. But it's for this authority to be flexible and agile to address those issues at this local level for the benefit of our residents. So, for instance, if I could just highlight, I mean, the idea of longer planting schemes for amenities, I think is really good. Rather than pulling out plants all the time, putting in a longer-term landscape value, that's great. That's also going to save work and effort. The green waste, I mean, it's been mentioned quite a lot tonight, whether we charge or not. I think the important thing here is if we do charge, some people, some residents will be concerned about that cost. But let's flip it on its side. The point is there, it is green waste. Why are we transporting it, taking it somewhere else for other people to compost? Why aren't we doing all that we can to encourage our residents to compost at home? That's got to be the logical way. So I think there are lots of changes, and I'm very pleased to hear about the payroll and procurement and how local authorities are beginning to share services and becoming more efficient. So overall, although I think there are some, the specific questions that are being raised tonight, I am quite content, and I'm also reminded and as a performance management and scrutiny committee, that through the year we have had the performance figures come in front of us, and I note that most of our projects and everything are also very much on track, and there's very little that's falling out. So I think our not only our financial control is good, but actually I think the way that we are delivering our projects of this council is also good, because those performance quarterly figures have been really important to guide this committee as to what is actually going on. So overall, I welcome it. It's the first time you've come before us with the budget tonight, so thank you. I know there are plenty of other opportunities for us and councillors to dig much deeper if needed, and I welcome those opportunities as well. Thank you.
Okay, yes, indeed, if you'd like to respond on that.
Thank you. I think those are actually quite kind remarks. You're right. We have a finance operation that is diligent but transparent. So we, the Cabinet and you, members, not just through this venue. I mean, we've had several meetings where we've had a drains up with members about what the budget looks like quite early on in the process. And it's been, I think from discussing with others, very few other authorities make their budget setting process quite as transparent as we do to take on members' comments. And you talked about inflation, and actually it's interesting that the Essex County Council issued some analysis from the OBR just yesterday, I think, and they anticipate that we won't get back to 2% inflation, and we're currently at, let's say we're at 11, but it's probably it will subside quite soon, quite rapidly. But until we get back to the target 2%, will be 2027, right through this MTFS period. We are going to have to, we as an authority, have to manage our cost increasing by the inflation, and you know all the things that are affected by inflation. We all do. But people go to the shops, they realise that staple things that you buy every day, including energy and the like, are going up. So we have to be really diligent to make sure that we look at every saving opportunity that is possible now, because if you bake in cost now, it goes right through the MTFS and becomes much more difficult for the next authority, for the next administration, when they inherit this, to find that they actually are struggling to, and other authorities have come across this, they're struggling to actually balance the budget without using reserves. And I remind everyone, if you've only got 6 million of reserves and you're trying to close a 2 million gap, if you do that 3 times, you've now got no reserves. And a council without reserves can't borrow. Some of the lots of things they can't do when you get down to that low level reserves. And I'm sure you know the authorities that I may be hinting at, and we're not in that situation. But I thank you for your kind comments.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McKee. Does any other members of this committee have any more questions? It doesn't look like it. I've got a couple more questions to ask, then I'll hand it over to the rest of the membership. So the first one of those is regarding shared services. I noticed the intent to explore those further, which I think is a good thing, absolutely, and fully support that. And indeed, this committee supported that during our findings earlier in the year, so that's good. I guess really the question is, what sort of appetite is there out there for other councils to engage in that process? And is there anything currently in progress at the moment that gives us some idea of what might be on track or in progress? Thank you. And I'll ask the last question after that.
Right. I was on actually the appetite is increasing significantly, and the reason is that they're all every council that is on the network. I mean, I was on a call this morning with hosted by Essex County Council to all the finance officers across the whole of Essex, excluding Thurrock, who weren't on it. And all of them are, in fact, and one of them particularly was very complimentary about the work that Braintree District Council with Essex County Council support on procurement. And I think you mentioned that James, when he went to meet with them, found 629 suppliers that were common between Braintree and their authority. And clearly it's nonsensical that two authorities, and everyone said, oh, well, we've probably got the same 629, so we'd like to get into that programme. So it then went to a wider debate of why we're only looking at procurement. Let's look at, and the whole list of things coming out that from the finance leaders in those authorities that want to work with other authorities to save time, energy, money, because they know full well that the days of everyone keeping everything in-house to do with the gap that everyone's trying to fix in their budget are gone. It's gone. So this actually may be a moment. Major change always has something to drive that major change, and this could be the thing that drives major change in our desire as authorities to collaborate more widely than just the way we have in the past. And by the way, as I said earlier, we've been quite a leader in this, in the way that our authority has gone out and run services for other authorities across Essex. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. That's very encouraging news, and certainly gives us hope that something, particularly on the payroll share service, I know is very successful. And if we can repeat that on other things, then that will be a very good step forward. The last question I have, I agree with Councillor Sphere that the performance-wise, what we've seen here as a committee has been generally very good performance, but one of the areas of concern that we have in our last scrutiny, which we are signing off, we're being presented with a report to sign off as the next agenda item, is the delivery of Section 106 and the performance related to that. And once the report is complete, you'll see that there is a shortfall in terms of the speed of delivery of projects on Section 106. And this is an area of concern that this committee has. And if we approve our report tonight, then I would like to share that with you so you can see those findings and that where those concerns lie and those recommendations. They may have budget implications. So I can understand that is not the great time for this to come forward. If it's a negative one, that is, which it could well be. I guess all I would ask is that, subject to us approving this report tonight, that you see that report at the earliest opportunity and start to make some review of those findings, and consider those as part of the budget implications going in the coming rounds that you have. I know formally it will go to Cabinet in due course, but prior to that, now that you're right in full flight of this, I would ask that you take that into account, subject to us approving it.
I know Councillor Mrs Spray is ready and waiting to receive the report. And we'll look at it as a matter of urgency, and I'm sure if there are any items in there that she thinks are acceptable but will have budget implications, she will draw it to our attention at a very early stage, and we've got time between the next few weeks to be able to do that. But I know she's absolutely desperate to get it, aren't you?
Yes, Chairman, I'm staying on for the next item this evening. I don't intend to ask questions or speak. I'm going to keep my powder dry for Cabinet, but I will be paying close attention to the report and your discussions this evening, and we will give due consideration to any recommendations before it comes to Cabinet. Thank you.
Okay, I know you've been waiting very patiently for this, and I understand your desperation, and we will satisfy that desperation, hopefully, before not too long. Okay. Right, any other members for the committee before I hand over to the rest of the group? Yeah? Okay, right. So I'm now going to hand over to the other members of the group. I do have notification here of two. If we just, I recognise them. I'll come back to you. I have two online which I'm aware of, so I'll take those first, clear those, come to the rest of the group, and then we'll see where we have up as a mop-up after that. So, officers, could you ask for the questions, or I don't have the questions.
Thorogood first?
I'm sorry?
Do you want Councillor Thorogood first?
Yes, why not? I don't mind which way around. Councillor Thorogood first. Your question, sir.
Okay, thank you. One of mine's a local question to my ward. Fearing Community Hall's capital bid has been rejected. I just want to ask whether that could be reconsidered. Basically, it was a very good bid by the Fearing Community Centre. They're aiming to reduce the carbon footprint of the building. It was built in 1987. They've already started the process with some grants through the County Council and other sources, and they've been able to introduce solar panels, introduce some double glazing replacement to replace the single glazed original windows from 1987. But they want to further reduce the carbon footprint by fitting a battery storage so that the electricity can be stored for use in the evenings. They want to replace the ceiling LED lights with more efficient, replace the existing lights with more efficient LED lights and also insulate the ceiling. And they want to replace two very large windows from single glazed to double glazing. Now, the community centre, if you're familiar with it, shares the building with the village school. So it is also the only building in Fearing that is available as a location for group activities all the way across the age groups from babies in preschool right up to pensioner groups and martial arts groups, etc., WI and all that sort of thing. They all use it now, and also the main hall is used by the primary school. So all these measures are helping to reduce the costs of electricity, which is obviously a big thing at the moment, and they're trying to make it as fuel efficient as possible so that the centre can maintain the hiring fees as they are now rather than having to put them up because of rising fuel costs. And also this would help the school because they use it in the day for school dinners, etc., and gym and assemblies and stuff. So that would help them reduce their costs too. So you say you've looked at it and it's a no-go at the moment, but I'd ask you to reconsider it. But you did say also that you would help, if you can't do it, then you would help the community centre look at ways of getting extra funding. And I just want to know how you would do that. Just very quickly, that's that question there. I just want to ask about the green beans, sorry. The £45, I take it that was for a whole year of green beans. If people don't take it up, say like half the people don't take this up, does that cost go up for the people that do decide to pay? And have you looked at means testing it, i.e. would it be possible for people on universal credit and housing benefit not to pay? Because it seems for those that can afford it, £45 a year isn't much, but for people that haven't got anything money, it's a lot of money. So I just wondered if it would be possible to means test it, if this charging did go ahead, but is the cost of that too much? Thank you.
Okay, James.
Yes, if I could take two questions. No, we haven't, Councillor Thorogood didn't thought to means testing. It's not something which would be easy to do. We would want a system which was as simple as possible. Experience elsewhere has shown that, yes, there is initially some resistance, although not that great, according to authorities that have gone down that line. But clearly we would need to see exactly what the situation was with regard to Braintree. It may well be, of course, that a number of those people in receipt of those sort of benefits may not themselves have a garden, much more likely to be living in properties that don't necessarily benefit from the use of a green bin. So, but we would look at that. On the issue of your capital bid, I'm just going to ask Phil, I think, through you, Chairman, I think in total, the total capital applications, bids, came to 800 odd thousand. I've got that figure in my head, or was it more?
It was actually in excess of £1 million. The bids
Right,
that came
in excess of
yes.
£1 million. Fine. Thank you very much. And we have significantly reduced that already. We've still got more work to do. So I don't want you to feel that we're putting something down on fear. There are a lot of other applications that were done. And this is in no way to in any way downgrade what the parish council wants to achieve. The thing is, of course, there are lots of holes in this sort of situation. And I'll be quite honest, one of the things we thought, if we agree this, how many more will be coming along which we just will not be able to sustain, etc. But there may be other ways in which we can work with the parish council or help the parish council to achieve what it wants to do. So we haven't just sort of said, well, that's it and ignore it. We will see what we can do, and I will ask officers to keep in touch with you, Councillor Thorogood, on what, if anything, might be available.
Okay. I think that covers those questions. So I think we have Councillor Pell, I believe, waiting from Halstead. Councillor Pell, you answer your question?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman. First of all, can I do a clarification that members have been talking about? Is the car parks in Halstead are owned and run by the Town Council, apart from the one that is owned by the co-op called Solar, which is managed on their behalf by the Town Council. All the toilets are also in the ownership of Halstead Town Council. My question is, in the earlier slides, it referred to Halstead Public Gardens, as if there is communication going on between the Town Council and BDC over that park. Now, I don't quite understand what it is going on, but I know that I have had a communication as the management committee member for BDC that there is talks going on, but as a town councillor also, I am not aware of that. And I'm sure that you are not either, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to know exactly what is going on. I know the paperwork that I did have, I was told I couldn't share, but here we are now in a public meeting, so that's why I'm asking the question.
I agree. The Town Council, no explanation, have not been involved in this at all so far. But, yeah, could you answer?
The intention is that we would talk with both Witham and Halstead Town Councils. I don't off the top of my head, I know we've spoken with Witham Town Council. I don't know off the top of my head, and I don't think I have any support here, as to what conversations or letters or whatever, if anything, has yet been done. But basically we would like to treat Halstead and give Halstead the same opportunity as Witham, if they so wish. But it will be a matter for the Town Council to decide whether it would wish to take over the gardens, and not something that we would, well, we're not in a position to force it upon the Town Council anyway. So all I would say to Councillor Mrs Pell is, if we haven't as yet started that, we will shortly be doing that.
Okay. Can I just make a comment then, to Mr. Chairman, to
Yes,
say
carry on.
that the House of Public Gardens are award-winning, something that we're proud of. The staff that maintain those gardens, and particularly when we lost the Queen, how the way that they looked after those gardens and the people with their wreaths, etc., that they were bringing into the gardens. Personally, I don't think the Town Council would be able to provide the service that BDC does to give us gardens like we have.
Okay, sorry. There may have been conversations with Halstead in Bloom on that, but that isn't the Town Council.
No, it isn't.
No. But we will get that sorted. That's not a problem, and we will need to talk to the Town Council, because that's who we would be looking to see whether they were interested in taking it over.
Mr. Chairman, it needs to go to a statutory body, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know it's something Halstead is very proud of.
Yep.
And it will be for the Town Council to decide how proud it is of those gardens and how much it is prepared to put in itself to maintain the high level which is there.
Okay, well, we'll wait and see in further discussions what happens on that in that regard. Councillor Pell, is that all your questions, yeah?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further questions on the chat books? No? In which case, it's the turn of the team in the room. So, yeah, Councillor Abbott, would you like to ask your question first?
Thank you. 3 questions and a suggestion as to where we can free up some money. The first question relates to the reduction to the parish councils, and I should declare an interest. I'm a chairman of a parish council for the street budget. I was talking to Councillor Walsh as well this afternoon about this. So the question I am asking is also on behalf, in effect, of 5 parish councils who we've been talking to today. Although it doesn't seem a large amount in terms of the overall budget, 29,000, it could have a very significant impact on the parish councils. I would argue that parish councils bring added benefit, are very cost effective, and that street cleaning budget is very well used by the parishes for things like litter clearing and grass cutting, etc. So my plea would be don't do it. My plea would be keep the street budget as it is. The second question is, has the Cabinet thought of the timing? So as far as I'm aware, these are suggestions at the minute. If you do decide to do this, when would you do it? When would it become formalised? Because, of course, parish councils are starting to go into their setting discussions now. And this could be quite a significant sum to some of them. I know it is to the parish council I chair. So that's the question around that. The second question is around the capital bid I submitted. I'd reiterate what I've said in previous years, that I think this process, the budget setting and scrutiny process, is excellent at this council and has been for many years. But there is now a big caveat I'm going to put into that I think the handling of issues in Silver End has been abysmal. I've said this now in numerous meetings, and I've phoned Councillor John McKee about this. I put a bid in for Silver End Bowls Club after 3 years of discussions with the Bowls Club and officers, and it's a bespoke bid. I hope Councillor Butland's not going to make his usual comment, well, if we do this for them, what about all the others? Does the District Council own another bowls club in the centre of a conservation area village with these particular access issues? I don't think it does. What you have before you is completely different to what is stated in Appendix C, which is what I submitted. There's been no discussion with me or the Bowls Club about the possible for a public car park on that land. I doubt that some of the Cabinet members who've looked at this have probably even been there and know all the issues involved. It's an off-the-cuff decision you've made. I'm assuming that this car park would be paying display or permits, something like that. You could actually end up making the situation worse. And the Bowls Club's not just used by the Bowls Club, it's used by other organisations, such as an organisation which I'm the president of, grand title, which supports elderly people, the Friendship Club. It's also used for village events. So I would urge you, please talk to us locally instead of this high-handed attitude that you just change a councillor's bid on the basis of some discussion you've had at Cabinet without talking to us locally. Third point, more positively, I think the proposal for the reduction in urban grass cutting could be an opportunity, on a positive side, for rewilding, which obviously I have long supported. I think, though, it would need quite a bit of buy-in from residents and discussion. So, I mean, some people won't like it. They will say, well, the area looks scruffy. But in terms of biodiversity improvements, if we can talk to local communities, I think it could be very beneficial. And similarly, in terms of a positive, I welcome the proposal for have LED lights at the leisure centre, but would urge that the design of those is very carefully considered. The current lights at the leisure centre can be seen from 6 miles away. If they're done properly, the impacts of light pollution, as well as reducing energy costs, could be significant. And then on to my suggestion. I have a suggestion to free up £2.5 million for the council. why is this council proposing, when it's not a highway authority, to subsidise the Millennium Slips, which connect a county council road to a national highways road? Also, given the context that the future of the A120 is very uncertain, the Route D's been with the government for a long time now, there's been no funding announcement and no confirmation that it's going ahead. What if the Millennium Slips money goes in and then we find we've got to undo part of it because an A120 route is chosen as differently? But fundamentally, my question is, why is this council and its council taxpayers funding £2.5 million, a lot of money, to a road scheme when it's not a highway authority? And I'm sure Councillor Butland will be the first to say on many other things, it should be the relevant authority who's paying the money to do these things. So why aren't the County Council and National Highways paying for it? Thank you.
Okay, series of questions there.
Yeah, I'll take them in the order they were asked. On parish councils, 29,000, of course that sounds a lot of money, but shared amongst the number of parish councils who actually have agreements with us is actually quite a small amount per parish council. There would be nothing to stop parish councils, who are the one level of government that are not capped and have significant reserves, because we have looked at the reserves of all parish and town councils, could fund the district council to continue carrying out that work. And I suspect the most in an area, I mean, I haven't got the exact figures, but there won't be many that will be over 4 figures. So that's, just put that into context. In terms of the timing, as I said last year to parish councils, you do need, before setting your thing, to be aware of some of the possibilities. That's why we hope this meeting and give advance notice of things that are currently being thought about. So that's the situation on that. On the capital bid for that was put in, I think we've been very open. We haven't made a decision. What we have asked for is a feasibility study as to whether that should or should not be done. And when we get that as a cabinet, we will give that consideration. It may be that we decide not to proceed, or it may be that we will proceed. And if we do proceed, then we will, or wish to proceed, we will discuss that with the relevant people, including the local ward councillors. The third thing about, I agree with the urban cutting. I think there will be quite a lot of opposition to that, and those of us in urban areas, I suspect, will be getting quite a lot as to why things are not done. That's something where, you know, we've got to stand up and be prepared to support what we're saying. And I think the question of rewilding and the opportunity to plant wildflowers is something that we would like to do, and an opportunity for communities to participate that if they so wish. As regards the 2.5 million, first of all, it's capital, not revenue. And it was decided several years ago that that would be the case. And it was part of our programme of saying that we will use new homes bonus not to support the general reserve, but we will put it aside and use it for infrastructure improvements so that people in the district could see some of the benefits that arise from the new homes that have taken place. And we put this aside as part of a combined work with the county council and the highways. Now, if the county council don't go ahead, or if the A120 is done, this money won't be spent on that. It will go elsewhere. Just plain and simple. And I would have thought that Councillor Abbott would understand that we would not be doing that. But we believe that the new homes bonus is something, in a way, is a return to the community who some will think have to suffer new houses. Others of us would say we're providing much needed housing for people in our district. But that there is a direct correlation between what we spend the new homes bonus on and how it was taken. something I suggest, Chairman, that your committee on Section 106 will be taking a similar approach to us on that. So that's what that is. It would not help the revenue budget for this year or succeeding years. If it is not used, it would free up. You saw the table, Chairman, of the capital and what capital was available. It would either enable us to do something else with that or to reduce the amount of the capital expend. And that would be the situation. So hopefully, the one I haven't answered is the LED lights. I just hear a point on that that's something one would want to do. I'm not an expert on that, but I'm sure other people who were here will have heard that. So hopefully I've answered the 6 points that were raised, Chairman.
Okay. No, you had a response to your questions. Okay. Are there any other further questions? Yes, Councillor Hensmith, respect. You're right doing that, is it? Is it right? Yes, right. Sorry. Okay. So we be first. You put your hand up earlier. Are you still? Okay. Wish you take your question. We'll come back to Councillor Hensmith.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to go on talking about green bins as well now. The budget or the cost of them is 583k a year. Roughly 50,000 properties in the district. That is £12 per household. If you're looking at charging £45 per year for this service, are you suggesting that's only going to be a 25% uptake? If that is the case, there will be a lot more journeys to recycling centres, causing more carbon dioxide in the air. There will be more fires in people's gardens, so there will be more phone calls to the environmental services to come out and sort it out. And there'll also be more fly tipping, because 75% of the people have got to get rid of this waste. Are you, or how much have you changed the budgets for environmental service to cover this and the fly tipping budget? My second question is about parking. It's a car park in near Tesco's in Witham, which is free for 3 hours. My wife at the moment on a Saturday night pay 10p to park near the church where she goes to church. That, under the new proposals, will go up to £2.80. I know what she'll be doing. She'll be parking a little further away and walking there. And probably about 40 other people at the church will also. But I do welcome the increase in the A12 cleaning budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions. Have we got some responses?
On the question of the green bins, I'm not quite sure what Councillor Wright wants about green bins. Do you want us to continue as we are, or do you want us to stop them?
I'm just suggesting that if you start charging, which I'm against, but there would be extra costs involved by doing that, because people will fly tip. The council has to pay the fly tip, and it's going to cost more than £12 or £45 to clean that fly tip up. They're going to have more phone calls to environmental services about fires in people's gardens, because I've sorted out 2 for one of my residents this year, and that's not garden waste, that's other waste, which had bonfires. So there's going to be more phone calls, so officers are going to be going out more in the evenings, weekends, talking to residents about bonfires in gardens. I'm just saying there's going to be an extra cost, so it's not all going to be a saving. And also, while we're talking about it, that is not a free service. We pay for it, or the residents pay for it in their rates. So they're paying for it already in their rates. So the service is not free.
Okay. It's not a statutory service. Okay? So that's the first thing. Secondly, I have more regard for the residents of this district than obviously Councillor Wright does. I do not believe that the residents of Braintree are any less responsible than the residents of those districts in Essex where there is a charge for green bins. Now, only time will tell whether I'm right or whether Councillor Wright is right in that the residents of Braintree will in some way act in a perverse way not to do it. In terms of the charge, yes, there are 50,000 houses, but of course not all of them. One will need a green bin because they don't have a garden. If you live in a flat, you haven't got much green waste to get rid of. And also, there will initially, I think, be some drop-off. That's what most places have found. Not a great deal. Time will tell. So in terms of that, if we either do nothing and we leave that 583,000 cost in there to be soaked up, or we actually make an effort to change things. So that's what I would say on that. On the parking, yes, clearly where there is a free parking facility, I'm not sure Tesco run their parking for the church, but I can understand people would want to go there. But if it means people are walking a little bit further, and they're able to walk a little bit further, that's all part of our well-being. That's great. It's a pity they take the car there in the first place, because I, like Councillor Wright and Councillor Abbott, want people to use cars less. So anything that makes it less attractive to use the car, I would have thought that members of the Green Party would have welcomed. There was a third question?
I was congratulating the council on suggesting that they were increasing the cleaning budget for the A12.
Absolutely, and that I pay tribute to both Councillor Abbott and Councillor Wright for the work they've done, particularly on the slip roads, etc., and the very successful campaign that's been done, and I fully support them. And if we can get agreement with all the authorities along the A12, so that's Brentwood, Chelmsford, ourselves, Colchester, to be able to do that on a more regular basis on the main carriageway, I think we would all welcome that. It's the main road through the county, and I think we all would like to see it in a better condition than it is on occasions.
Like you, I prefer not to throw it out in the first place.
Sorry?
I'd prefer not to throw it out in the first place.
So would I, absolutely.
Yeah. And a correction on the Tesco's car, it wasn't the car park at Tesco's or Tesco's car park. It's next to Tesco's store, and it's free for all the shoppers in Witham.
Right, excellent, good. Okay, I think we'll move on. Councillor Hensman next, I believe, then Councillor Martin. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. That keeps Corinne fit, going from one to the other. I've got a few points, if I may. First off, if recycling calendars are provided on request to residents who require accessibility, then in the same way, if car parking machines are to be removed, then can free parking for blue badge holders be reinstated? Every neighbouring authority, Colchester, Malden, Chelmsford, Uttlesford and Cambridge, provide at least 3 hours free with a time clock. Sudbury goes one further and provides 3 hours free for everyone. This is the only authority which charges. Halstead, that includes you too. We want to encourage visitors to this district. We are driving people away. There is no loss in revenue as blue badge holders will park on double yellow lines for their 3 hours instead of using the car parks. With the hanging baskets here, I get, yes, whilst it's pretty and it helps the insects and the bees and so on, don't take them away. Could the community do it instead? When I was at Halstead during the summer, Halstead and Bloom actually offered to come over and help Braintree get going. And if I can find a suitable community group, so if the assets are already there, can we leave them? And that way we can hopefully pretty up the town, especially now that we've spent millions on improving the pedestrianisation. I think it would go a bit further. And my last one is Councillor Abbott's taken a bit of this, which is I'm pleased to see the LED lighting at BLC. I had the pleasure of visiting it last night, and the floodlights were, despite being in some state of disrepair, buzzing away with the sheer amount of power that was being wasted. Another issue raised its head last night was that the athletics track was laid 30 years ago with a shelf life of 25 years. It is in desperate need of replacement at great cost, mainly through neglect, lack of planning for its lifetime, and it's in in danger of losing its trust mark, which is very important in the field of athletics. Is there anything that can be done which includes transferring the asset, like we have with the community buildings, which would enable other funding, such as lottery, to be accessed? Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for those questions. There's a little bit of a list there, if you'd like to work through that.
First of all, I appreciate Councillor Hensman is a strong advocate for people with disabilities, and I hear what he says about the blue badge, and we will have a look. I'll make no promises, but we will have a look, and whether new machines can cope with it, etc., and how easy that might be done. The second question was related to, I can't read my own writing here.
Hanging basket.
Hanging baskets, oh yes, and communities. I think we would welcome if there are communities that might want to do it, and though I'm seeing a waving hand, so I'll ask Councillor Mrs Smith to come in on that. Yep.
The cheapest part is filling the hanging baskets. It's a one-off. It is the watering where the cost is. So if communities fill them, do they have the equipment, time and ability to constantly water them? That is where the major cost is.
But I think we'd be happy to discuss the feasibility of whether that could be done. I mean, I wouldn't want, if someone is able to do it and do that, I wouldn't want to in any way turn them down from doing that. Okay? And the issue of the running track. Can I, through you, Chairman, just ask Phil? That was one item that was originally on our list of capital things. Yep. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So that was.
And the price was, the amount is
400,000.
400,000. Yeah. Peter, Councillor Tattersley.
Yeah, there's been quite a few discussions about the athletics track and the hockey club. The problem down there is that it keeps getting vandalised, and I do worry that if it's left as it is, it's not going to last 2 minutes. So we are arranging to have a meeting with the town council, the police, Fusion, the hockey club, and anybody else that uses that to see whether we can find a reasonable solution to it. But I would be reluctant to recommend that we spend, let's say, £1 million on refurbishing that without doing something about the infrastructure, the fencing and so on. The athletics club and the hockey club have also asked about floodlighting and CCTV. These are all options that I think that we need to have a look at. But I agree with you, it's not in a good state.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Kilmartin was next, then I'll come back to Councillor Everard.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just a couple of points. The vandalism that Councillor Butlin spoke about some time ago of the toilets in Witham is now so great that it costs as much as it does to have the cleaner go in and put it right and to clean it every day. So they're non-viable, and we in Witham, having discussed this only recently, would quite like to see that building, little building, pulled down and some kind of cafe with its own toilet facilities put in its place. And that would be probably self-paying then. And the second thing about green bins, I live in a flat, and I take my own greenery out in a bag to the dump. But next year when I stop driving, I'm going to have to alter what I do. And I'll probably, being old, use the shopping trolley then. And I will be taking my small green waste round to the dump in a shopping trolley. But the point that Councillor Beavis made is quite interesting. What are you going to do with all these green bins? And I would suggest that with a bit of extra help, they could all become mulchers themselves and be put to good use in one's own back garden.
Okay, Chairman. First of all, I agree with the comments of Councillor Kilmartin about the toilets and the vandalism. And certainly, if Witham Town Council would prefer to see that, that certainly would be something which we would very seriously look at, because what we don't want is a building just boarded off, which will then become, graffiti and that sort of thing. So we will be with her on that. And if the view from Witham Town Council is that they don't wish to take over the running of those toilets, even if they were refurbished by the District Council before handing over, because that's one of the things I am quite keen about. If we're going to hand things over, we've got to invest and hand them over in a good state, not hand over rubbish, because no one's going to take that. So we will await that. But if that is the view of Whitton Town Council, we will happily go along with demolishing that. The provision of a cafe, etc., I couldn't commit to, and we certainly wouldn't be running a cafe. And I wouldn't want to get in, what any planning committee might think of putting a cafe there. But that would be for another day sort of thing. And on the issue of green bins and what we would do with them, if we decide to move forward with this proposal, there will be a full report and all the costs, because there will be set-up costs involved, including what you do with the green bins, which will come as part of a public document before we go down that line. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Everard, I think you're next.
Yes, thanks. I'd like to refer back to the athletics. I'm waiting for some information to come in, actually. But I think there might be something going on between the athletics and fusion. But I don't want to jump on the wrong conclusion. But I will say this about the athletics club. They have replaced a lot of equipment, expensive equipment, lots of things there, and they've built lots of buildings as well, reception area, storage, and lots of other things as well. I can't recollect everything, but all I'm saying is that they are doing a lot there of their own volition. But clearly, this £400,000 is beyond what they can actually do. Now, I don't know whether you know anything about the discussion between fusion and
yes, I think Councillor Hensman is speaking primarily about the Whittam athletics track and hockey. Oh no, you're talking about the Brentry one. Okay. I had a meeting with the new chief executive of Fusion today, and we were discussing an awful lot about their future investments. But we are very early stages on that, and I really wouldn't like to comment on how they're likely to go at this stage.
Okay, I'm looking around to see if there's any other hands going up, which I can't see. No. Any more online? No? Okay, so no further questions, in which case, thank you, members. If there are no more questions, the committee is asked to note this report. Can I take it that the report is noted by a show of hands, please? Okay, thank you. The report has been noted. Before I proceed with the next agenda item, I would like to thank all members of the Cabinet, members of the audience, Phil Myers, Head of Finance, and also the Management Board for their attendance this evening. You're welcome to leave the meeting at this point if you so wish, but you're also welcome to stay. But I hope you've got a good feedback from everyone tonight that will help you in the next round of your deliberations. Thank you. I'll just let members move on, then we'll carry on. Good. Okay. Members of the committee, we shall now proceed to agenda item 6, which is scrutiny review into section 106. Members, before us this evening is our draft report for the scrutiny review into section 106. Members, you have seen and been invited to comment on the previous drafts of the final draft that was circulated to members on Tuesday. This evening we are reviewing the final draft and approving it for submission to Cabinet, who will provide a response to our recommendations. At this stage, we should not be looking to add any further content to the report, but if anyone is concerned with how anything is expressed within the report, we can look at revisions. So, over to you, members. Do any members have any comments on this? Councillor Swear.
Chairman, I'd just like to ask Councillor Courtauld if there's any spelling errors in the document before we address it.
Not anymore.
We thank Councillor Courtauld for his diligence in helping us with the spelling on the report and some other matters. So thank you for that. Improves the quality. Well done. Are there any other questions on this now or comments on this report? I can't see anything. Councillor Courtauld, you ever find another spelling mistake?
I haven't found any more spelling mistakes, but just to make a comment, I think it is very clear and logical and makes sense and is a very good document. So well done us.
Okay, well done committee then. Thank you for that. Okay, as their members, there's no decision required on this report. However, I would ask for members to agreement to approve the report subject to any amendments. Well, there are no amendments, so it is as it is. So please, members, can you indicate your agreement by a show of hands? Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. So that report can now go forward to Cabinet at the earliest opportunity. We shall now proceed to agenda item 7, which is the decision planner. Members were asked to note the decision planner for the period 1st of December 2022 to the 28th of February 2023. Before we do this, do members have any issues that they would like to raise in respect of the decision planner? I can see no hands going up. So, thank you, members. Do I have your agreement that the decision planner has been noted by a show of hands? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay. Thank you, members. The decision planner has been noted. Okay, members, as there is no urgent business, this item concludes our business for this evening. Before I close the meeting, I would just like to remind members that the next meeting of the committee will take place on the 1st of February 2023, which I believe is the second round of scrutiny of the budget.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So I will close this meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee at 21:23. Thank you, members, for your attendance this evening, and to those watching the broadcast via the Council's YouTube channel. Have a good evening.